becoming a dependent upon outside funds. And if you build a ministry anywhere in the world on money that comes from abroad, like paying a pastor to pastor a church, eventually that's going to come to naught. And I've just learned that through experience. And so we don't do a whole lot of that. What we do is help these young men that are starting churches establish income streams. And it doesn't take a lot. Some of those pigs you saw up there, I'll give you an example. We help with about $300 in starting a pig farm with a pastor in Liberia. Now we got 10 pastors in Liberia that have their own pig farm. Now, again, you think, well, what in the world? So you're pastoring out in the village, and you got piglets that are coming each year, and they're breeding them. And when those piglets go into town, on average, in U.S. dollars, in Liberia, they're selling a full-grown pig now for about $250 to $300. Well, you can imagine you're living in a place where there's not much income at all, and you're selling 3 pigs and making $750. That's a big deal to a national pastor, you know. And even if you do that only a couple times a year, that's still a big deal, you know. Poultry farms, we've got several places. We have 87 Bible schools that are now scattered around the world in different places through the Lone Star Baptist College out of Mesquite, Texas. And those Bible school students, there's now up to 1,700 of those, training for the ministry, going to Bible school, learning from their own pastor. We're just offering them a curriculum and keeping their records for them. But we started a thing about probably 6 months ago or 8 months ago called our GOAT ministry, where a guy gets into Bible school and he's living out in the middle of nowhere, and we help him raise goats. And you can buy, in most African countries, you can buy a couple of goats for $35. And so we bought dozens and dozens and dozens of goats, and these young men that are going to Bible school got their own little herds that they're building. And it's not going to just help them get through Bible school, but they get out of the ministry, they've already got some money coming in. Most of them aren't married, so when you get married, you got to have something, you know. And so those types of things are little practical things. A church out in San Antonio, Texas, just last month, one of our supporting churches from their Vacation Bible School, you know how Vacation Bible School kids that collect money, sent us $1,900 for goats. Well, we got a lot of money coming in for goats now. But those are just practical things that church members, you know, in our world, we can't really relate to that. But if you were living in a third world context, I'll give you an example. I was up in northern Kenya about 5 months ago, and these 2 young men that go to one of our Bible schools there, if you imagine this, it was a desert area. The people I think I mentioned this morning are called the Turkana people. If you ever seen pictures of women that got rings around their neck and their neck looks about that long, that's from the Turkana tribe. But these 2 young Turkana boys, they walked for 2 days through the desert to come to that service I was at. They stayed for Bible school Monday through Thursday at that little local church where we help. And then they walked 2 days back to their village. Now, again, you and I, we can't relate to those types of things. We can't get out of bed on Sunday morning to make it to Sunday school, you know. And we got 2 young men that are about 25 years of age walking through the desert, sleeping on the sand at night to come to Bible school. And so we just decided we're going to help them, if that makes sense to you. You know, a lot of times we just give to missions and it's in a big barrel and we kind of wonder, I wonder where our money went. Well, that's one of those things that it helps folks to feel confident that this is going for a good cause, it's going for the gospel. And so that's our commitment. Brother Phil Heilman that you saw in the video, the young, one of them was my son Aaron, he's our youth pastor, but the other one was my dad, and then another man, Phil Heilman. He coordinates all that with us and communicates back and forth with churches like yours and with the national pastors overseas and so forth and so on. The book of Mark chapter 16, if you will. And I want to say again, I just thank you for your hospitality, your warmth towards Kim and I. We go to a lot of places, and of course, you know, every church has its own personality and own, your own flavor according to the pastor and your own makeup and everything. But you guys have been so good to us and friendly to us and thoughtful towards us. And from the bottom of our heart, we thank you deeply. When you're coming into a new place, you don't know anybody, and you show up. And by the way, when you're that way towards missionaries, you'll have visitors coming off the street and be that way towards them. Yeah. Because what you're doing is when you're friendly to outsiders, you're helping prepare their heart for when the preacher gets up and shares the Word of God, and they're feeling like these people care about me, and so I know that you do that, and I appreciate you doing that with us. The book of Mark and tonight's sermon kind of dovetails with the morning message by Pastor David, concerning the Great Commission and the mandate of missions. But would you look, this is my life verse. You know, sometimes you choose a verse. I chose this one when I was about 19, 18 years of age, and have kept it all these years with me. Mark chapter 16, and look at verse number 15. And he said unto them, this is Jesus after his resurrection. By the way, when I was down in Israel 3 weeks ago, I went down to what's called Gordon's Calvary, where the place of the skull is. You know, you might have seen pictures of it before. And I stood there. There's some folks that believe that it's at an Orthodox church and it's underneath there and where the Calvary was. I personally believe it's Gordon's Calvary, and the place of the skull is there, and you're right outside the walls of Jerusalem. And then you come down from that place where the place of the skull, and there's an empty tomb. I went inside that empty tomb, and again, I'm not 100% sure that's where Jesus resurrected. But one thing I am sure is Jesus resurrected, and he's alive, and the tomb's empty. And but after he resurrected, he said to the disciples, here it is in verse number 15, or verse 15, chapter 16, he said, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel. And here it is, this is the phrase I want you to pick up, to every creature. Every single human being deserves a chance to be saved. Absolutely. You can't make anybody get saved. You can't make people. You can witness till you're blue in the face to some people, and they're going to reject the gospel and end up in hell. But you and I have a commandment. Right. It wasn't the great suggestion. Yep. As Pastor said this morning, it wasn't optional. The commandment to every one of us is go into all the world. It starts with going. That was what you saw this morning. Going. It starts with going. Go into, he tells us where. Go to all the world. And he says preach, and he tells us what to preach. Preaching is not, you can preach a lot of good things. You can preach a sermon on heaven, but that's not the gospel. Right. You can preach a sermon on tithing. That's not the gospel. Right. He says preach the gospel. That's the death, the burial, resurrection of Jesus. Tell people the good news, how to be saved, that it's only through the blood of Christ that they can be saved. And then he tells us where to preach it or who to preach it to every creature. Right. So tonight's sermon is the every creature gospel. The every to preach it or who to preach it to every creature. Right. So tonight's sermon is the every creature gospel.